So go right ahead, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
call
Kick
this
us off.
meeting to order. Next, we'll be doing roll call. Bonnie Elliott.
Here.
James Langhorne.
Here.
Ken McClellan. Absent. Stephen Metzg. Absent. Juliet Sponsel. Absent. Vincent Wood.
Here.
Marcia Zillis. And Andrew Stuffler.
Here.
Next on the agenda is about the approval of the. Well, at this point, is there are there any amendments to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move item 6 ahead of item 5, since we have the representative from the Santa Barbara, the architect for the Santa Barbara Museum of Art here, and I don't see anyone here for item 5.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can't hear anybody.
Can't hear anybody.
I'm going to turn it up right now.
Is that better? No, that's lower.
I just can move.
Maybe I just need to get closer?
Yeah.
How about next item would be approval of minutes from our last meeting on the 26th. Is there a motion to?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. I was not here.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, I would, as the secretary to the board, I would like to point out that in the city's adoption of the building code, they do set the criteria for a quorum at 3 for this group, because if anybody happens to be listening to this or in the future is wondering why there's only 4 board members here and we're still having the meeting, Section 101.2.1 quorum says it shall take a quorum of 3 members to hear an appeal, and a majority vote of the board convened to sustain appeal. So just for the record, we do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. At this point, obviously not, but any public comment? Items not on the agenda? Nope. Okay, we move on. So at this point, do we, someone like to discuss the project introduction for the Santa Barbara Museum of Art renovation?
Yes, we have the architect
Yep,
here.
architect here.
Bob, come on up and join us.
Sure. That's quite all right. I'm Bob Kupiak. I'm the principal of Kupiak Architects, and I'm the architect for the Santa Barbara Museum of Art's renovation and expansion program. Andrew thought it would be a good idea that I would give you guys a brief presentation to give you some idea of what the museum's up to and the scope of the work that is being proposed. I think about 2-3 years ago, the museum contacted us and interviewed us, and the project that we looked at started as a roofing project and some mechanical equipment replacement. At the time, they were also doing engineering studies to examine the existing structure of the building, and they were doing brick tests all over the place. As you may know, the building that's on State and Anapamu Street is really comprised of a whole series of renovations that began and additions that began after the original 1912 post office building was built, and you can kind of see that as the core structure of the building. In the 40s, the McCormick wing was added. In the 60s, the Preston Morton and Sterling Morton wings were added to the sides of the building. In 82, the Park wing got built. 61, Preston Morton got added as this infill. 82, and then 96, the Peck wing on State Street. What we discovered as we started this project was that the aggregate amount of the repairs that had to be done to both re-roof the building, revamp all the mechanical systems that were now failing after 30 years, and bring it up to museum standards, and do the seismic work to retrofit the building that was necessary. This is all, everything in the 40s and the 1912 post office are all unreinforced brick masonry. So the repair work was kind of so invasive that the first thing we said is that we really need to do a master plan and kind of look at this building as almost as if it were one building. It's kind of never been examined in that way. I mean, there's what the original post office building looked like, but we can all imagine in 1912 that there's the post office, which suffered some damage in the 25 earthquake, but it's easy to see that there was much more invasive damage all around buildings that surrounded the museum building. A little aerial view. I mean, there's lots of mechanical equipment that's ready to be retired. Almost every existing skylight on the building is tarped over because there is no need for that level of natural light in the building. As a matter of fact, it's very unwanted.
Interesting.
Things are ready to be replaced. Roofing is ready to be replaced. There's lots of infrastructure in the building that is failing. There's also in the 1980s edition, there are 2 sub-basement levels below the building that are currently being used to store art. They have been flooded on a number of occasions. We tried to get a videotape of Lady Ridley Tree actually bailing water and hauling art out of the museum during one of the floods that occurred. They also have some other serious infrastructure problems. They have really no way of safely bringing art in and out of the building. Currently tractor trailers pull up on Anapamu Street and start offloading. Their storage facilities are kind of old and inadequate. There is $1 billion worth of art under the roof. And for any of us who've been to any of their recent shows in recent years, they've really worked hard to bring some spectacular exhibits to Santa Barbara, and we'd like that to improve and expand. Part of that problem becomes the surety companies. When we borrow art, there are very stringent regulations about how the art moves in and out of the building, how it gets stored, how it gets cared for. So we went through a kind of general review with the museum of things that were failing, what opportunities could exist to weave the building back together in a better way, public outreach improvements, LEED certification. Could we get some more storage and gallery space if it were possible? We are certainly moving the building into a much more higher energy efficient era for both lighting and air conditioning control. It's actually an image of the building as it will be and some of the things that are happening are a new loading dock and elevator facility. Freight elevator is being proposed on the Anapamu Street side of the building. There's State Street. There's a little piece of infill that can occur in between 2 of the additions to grab some more gallery space. We're actually shrinking the size of the skylight that's on the main roof of the building that's over Ludington Court. And what you can kind of see is that roof is now completely filled with mechanical equipment, air handlers, and different pieces of the air conditioning system. The McCormick wing that's way in the back is the very large room that's in the museum, and actually those brick walls are so tall that one of the ways that we're going to stabilize the structure of the building is to add a new floor so that they will gain some gallery space in that area. We're also going to add a little addition in the back, and there's probably a clearer drawing to see this. A new curatorial office wing is one of the additions. This room is an addition. And the rest of the building is kind of being reorganized so that it's just a more densified administrative set of departments. And we've gained a little gallery space by doing that. There's also a new entrance that's going to occur on the park side of the building that faces the library and the courthouse. And you'll see in another diagram, and one of the things that we're really trying to achieve is there are a lot of dead ends in the museum right now. People have a kind of difficult time navigating some of the museum because of the different levels of floors. And when the Park and Peck wing were built, they're kind of separate from each other, and we think that there's a way to fix that. We'll also do the lower level of the building and create better art storage, get them their loading dock facility, redo the gift shop and the restaurant. So if that's the existing floor plan of the lower level, we're going to work at giving them a much more concentrated, better storage facility by getting all of the art out of the sub-basements and just up to this level so that they're not in a bathtub. New facilities will be, much more robust than the ones they have now. That's the new elevator shaft for the freight and receiving facility. I mean, this is kind of what goes on now. Our feeling is it's not safe for the art. It's really not safe for pedestrians that are walking by down Anapamu Street. And the new truck access will give us a way to satisfy all the museum's loading requirements and kind of get most of the trucks off the street while they are loading art into the building. So some of that lower level space that's in one of the buildings will all be repurposed. The art will move up out of there. One level is going to become an education department, and another lower level is going to become the museum's operating facilities. And we'll do what we can to take those lower level spaces and make them as nice as they can for people who are going to be on a B level. There's also a refurbishment of the auditorium, but this new entrance to the rear of the building is really going to organize things as people enter. I call this the Santa Barbarans entrance. We all park in the parking lot and come in from that way. Most of the people visiting Santa Barbara come in from the State Street entrance. So this new piece of the puzzle is really going to give us a chance to recreate the staircase that's in the back, make for a much more transparent entrance to the building. There's a big Ridley Tree gallery here, and we're going to open this wall up in a later phase. And this gives us the kind of opportunity to come into the building from the rear and carve out this whole space that's in the back with this new staircase so that when people enter the building, they'll know exactly where they're going to go. They're going to see a gallery open in front of them. That entrance will be much more transparent, so you'll really be able to see inside. You'll actually be able to see all the way through to State Street when this is done. So you'll come in that entrance. Here's the new staircase. Ridley Tree will be open to the public, right, immediately visual from the new entrance, and the gift shop and the restaurant will be right through there. And actually, I don't have the right image, but you can see State Street. You can daylight all the way through the building. And the gift shop and the restaurant will be refurbished, and they have a meeting room and a library. The library is being moved out, and this will be kind of a multi-purpose room for the museum that can also be supported by the new restaurant facility, which will move up to have a little bit of frontage on State Street, the new gift shop, and there's this kind of glass wall that separates the gift shop and the restaurant, so they kind of work symbiotically. And their new multi-purpose room, which will have movable partitions so they can use it in a bunch of different ways. So on the main level of the building, which is where we have our dead-end problem here right now, it also, there's kind of we all know that sneaky stair that comes up back behind Davidson, and the flow of the building is not the way we would really like to have it. And by opening this wall up and creating this new entrance, there's kind of a clear line. There'll be a ramp that connects back. So now we'll really have that flow-through circulation that we'd really like to have. We're also removing a piece of gallery. The Thayer Gallery is going to become a new staircase. One of our, that's kind of what we're after by the time we're finished, to give visitors a better experience through the building. But we really want to be able to come in the entrance into Ludington Court, the main central space, and to have a clear line of view all the way to the second floor. So people will know that there's a gallery on the second floor and how to get there. So this new staircase will be added into Ludington Court, and it will go all the way up to the second floor. And when you're that last ascent, so that's the new gallery that is the second level of the McCormick Wing, which will be new space for the museum. So this is being added. This is being added. This is the below this is the Davidson Gallery. So this wing is the one-story addition that will create a new curatorial office bank. And when that's done, we can kind of move people out of here and start shuffling people through the building. The goal of the renovation is to keep as much of the museum open during construction. So we're really kind of closing half the building and keeping the other half of the building open while we do this work. That's kind of what it looks like today, and that's what it will look like when we're done. The new entrance will be installed, and this is the addition of the curatorial offices on the second floor. Once that's done, we'll renovate the front side. This is we've actually gone a little further than this, but on the second floor of the building, the goal is the same. Really try to create this circle of circulation. So this is the little piece of gallery and a link that we're adding over the Preston Morton Gallery, and it kind of completes the floor. So when we're done, actually we did this is new space on the second floor for contemporary art. These rooms that are currently filled with Asian art are going to become the permanent photography gallery for the museum. And the Asian collection is going to kind of move into this whole area, partly where it is now, and an expansion into this, and it's kind of wrapped by the administrative areas of the building. So our Asian collection will both, relocate and have the capacity to expand a bit. Especially our Indonesian art collection. And the new contemporary art gallery will be finished, and there's our freight elevator. This will be the first time the museum will have an elevator that actually brings art to every level of the building without having to jockey it around. This will be, the new contemporary art gallery will be skylit. And we, again, achieve the same kind of storytelling circulation pattern that the museum would really like to have, and which we think will serve the public in a much better way. There's only a little piece of the building left on the roof that doesn't have mechanical equipment on it, and there's a proposal to put a little pavilion and a rooftop terrace for other museum event and functions. So we're extending one of the staircase and elevators up to this building. On the back side, you'll come up an elevator, and there's a fire stair, there's a ramp and an entrance to the pavilion, and there'll be a new place sitting on top of a building in Santa Barbara to go and have lunch. And that's really what we're doing. I just want to go back to one, just so that you kind of understand one of the breaks of the project that's actually happening, just so it becomes a little bit more clear. Actually, this might be a good picture to look at. The proposal that's being made is that the drawings that we have in the building department at the moment there's a dividing line that exists here. This is the portion of the building that will undergo the first phase of the renovation. The refurbishment and structural improvements to the McCormick Gallery, the art receiving facility elevator, and the seismic retrofit of the main post office building. So this half of the building will close while construction is going on, and the other half of the building will remain open. And the existing buildings will be, life safety systems that are in the building will all be maintained. I think we have one portion of the project that's bleeding over this line that actually, when this portion of the building was done, the Preston Morton Gallery was unsprinkled. This was not a fireproof portion of the building. The building will all be brought up to Type 1 construction, so it will all be sprinklered and of a higher fire resistive rating. But we will add sprinklers to the Preston Morton Gallery so that at least the entire building is going to function at the same level, even as the first phase of the project moves forward. And that's what we're up to.
Yeah, so and the board members, the reason I asked Bob to come and make this presentation is because, as you can see, and maybe if you can go back to the slide that showed the years and the different galleries.
Sure.
Over the years, this project has grown, and in the course of growing, it now occupies multiple parcels owned by the city owns a small parcel, the county owns a parcel. I think, does the museum also own? No, they have no ownership in any of the parcels.
No.
So we've got a property line that runs through the building, and right now there's...
Well, that's not true. The portion that the museum owns sits on city land.
Okay.
And that is their portion of the building. But the rest of the old post office building and its adjacencies were all county property when the building was built as a federal post office.
And,
Or you have a land lease, and then the museum foundation owns the structure itself.
No, I think the county actually owns the post office.
it's very complicated.
It's very
That- So,
complicated.
and I don't want. Trust me. Well, you don't have to. If you want, I'll explain it to you. We'll have to take some more time to sit down and go through it because it's very complicated. But the different ownerships of the land and the buildings and the leases and the time periods of the construction have resulted in mixed types of construction in one building, essentially, one large structure that spans multiple property lines. So there are agreements and special language in leases, and we want to simplify that. And Bob has come up with a way, pretty ingeniously, by really going through the building, starting at its core, and determining that it can all be a Type 1, which is the least combustible building type in the building code. From a life safety standpoint, that's fantastic for us. And that they can actually do that with minimal structural work to the building, as far as replacing structural components that have to be fire rated. So they're going to do that. They're going to do the seismic retrofit of the original post office building, and they're going to complete this fire sprinkler system so that the entire structure is covered with fire sprinklers, by automatic fire sprinklers. So it's from a fire and life safety standpoint, it's a huge advancement for this property and all these additions that have been made to this building. But in trying to keep the facility operational while they do this, they're going to have to do it in phases. So we're going to have periods where Joe, the fire marshal, and I are going to be sitting down looking and saying, okay, you want to do this work under this permit? How are we going to maintain the egress so people can get out in an emergency? What's that going to mean for the fire life safety systems in the building? How are we going to accommodate accessibility? And we're going to have to make accommodations at certain points. We're not going to be able to have a fully compliant, fully accessible building, let's say, while we're in the course of phase 1 and phase 2. So just to have an awareness of that, if we bring things back to you for validation, this is sort of the groundwork for it. And as we come forward, we'll be bringing you not hardship requests, but alternate methods of compliance that are temporary while they do the work, and they span the years that it takes to accumulate the funds, do the fundraising, to get the contractor and get the work done. The term for the project right now is, 3 years or 5 years or something? 5 years.
We'd like to be finished by 2020.
See every bit of 5 years.
That's pretty aggressive, but you never know. I mean, if sometimes these projects get going and they get a lot of momentum, and then it really becomes more of a scheduling challenge. That's what they're hoping for. But that's why we're bringing it to you, so you're aware of that. And plus, it's also a pretty, I would have to say, this has got to be one of the more complex little corners of State Street. You walk by it every day, and it's pretty innocuous, but when you actually see what's inside of it, it's interesting to see how it all came together. So I thought you would also maybe enjoy that, the complexity of it.
We actually tell everybody the meetings that go on, especially when we're trying to figure out how to weave the mechanical and structural systems into this building, require a very large bowl of Advil sitting in the middle. It's complicated, and certainly in the 40s, but even into the 80s and 90s, kind of systems that were put into this building mechanically really weren't fully museum grade, certainly not by the standards that the American Association of Museums would measure today. So just trying to route ductwork through this building becomes, a major event. But to get it all packed in is kind of the goal, and to wind up our goal at the end of the day is not only to wind up with a museum that's a state-of-the-art museum for its time, but it's to fix it so that it's really one building. It's not a disparate set of additions that occurred over time, but to kind of fix it so that we're the best museum that we can be, responsibly on State Street.
I have a question. That's all right. It's been a while since I've been in the museum, but there's a section where you have to take an elevator to go to another section, and there's one part where if I recall, I couldn't get to it all. And I don't know if that was temporary or not. It's been a while. But I just wondered, is that going to be worked on later at some point? Because I didn't realize there was a bunch of different buildings. So, I mean, has that been taken into consideration?
In fact, the Ridley Tree Gallery at the moment is only accessible by a lift.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
because of the way we've reconfigured the ramp and the circulation through the building, this will be the only time that actually somebody can arrive at the Ridley Tree Gallery on their own without having to worry about a museum operator coming and operating the lift. So, yes, I mean, we fully believe that, this building needs to be made accessible, for all of us.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
So if there are no further questions, Mr. Chair, this was just an informational
Yeah,
item. There's
thank
no
you.
action necessary.
Did have a question. Go ahead, Jim.
This is just something I'm offering. My expertise is in fire sprinklers and how they fail, and why there's problems with sprinklers. And obviously, a museum is one of those places where you really do concern yourself with that. I would offer pro bono, with Joe Poire concurring, some job walks with you early on to see what could be salvaged, what should go, because it saved some people a lot of money in the past when I've done it.
No, you should come over and sit in on one of our go-to. We do a go-to meeting with the fire sprinkler engineer, and there's 3 or 4 different types of systems in this building.
Oh, I'm sure there are.
From all of the different iterations, there's wet pipe, there's pre-action, and we're kind of sorting through that now. Also, just to make sure that while some of this work is going on, because many of the feeds that are coming in off Anapamu Street are going to be interrupted, and temporary services have to be brought into the Peck and Park Wing side of the building in order to keep the building operational.
I just remember a tour of the Getty Museum, pretty epic, and they were quite proud of what they'd done. And I remember walking through. It was a union job, and everybody learned how to sweat copper pipe on that job. It was copper that had turned black by the time they'd finished. It was a double interlock system, very, very elaborate, but corrupt nevertheless.
Come on over. It's the same engineers.
Oh, really? Anyway, I'll offer that.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. You kind of answered the same thing I was going to ask. Is what kind of a system was it? If it was a dry system or a...
Yeah, it's both.
It's both. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, when Shumash took over an old hotel in Solvang that was a mess, was done terribly, they put a lot of money into it, and they was trying to figure out what they could hang on to, what they could leave. And I knew the facilities director, and again, just pro bono, I walked through and was able to save them about $250,000 in pipe they could salvage, pipe or alarms, conduits they could save, just by a little more careful and more deliberate approach to their demo.
I get that. We'd love a peer review.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
your presentation. Thank you. At this point, are we moving back to the appeals for the offense? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and in the absence of the appellant's presence,
Yes.
as the secretary and also the building official who's responsible for issuing the permit that's being questioned, I'll just make a brief report of my observations of what's happened at this property, and I'll turn it over to the board for their questions or decision. So this is a pretty classical example of 2 lots that, and I'm not sure, do we have a computer fired up for us to use? I know I didn't ask earlier, so.
Pretty sure.
That's okay. I can explain it. So you have 2 residential lots next to each other. In between the 2 lots is a shared driveway. There's an easement, supposedly private easement, for them, both property owners, to utilize the common driveway area to get to their garages in the back and for parking. And the relationship is broken down between the 2 parcel owners. So one of them came in knowing that we don't enforce private easements in building and safety. We can't. So we issued the permit for the fence to be put on their property, which practically speaking eliminates the functionality of the driveway for everybody. So this has been there's been a series of code enforcement cases back and forth between these property owners. So the gentleman came in and filed the appeal for us issuing the permit to the neighboring property owner for the fence. We explained we have to do that. You can appeal it if you'd like, but the only thing that, even if the board doesn't finds in favor with the appellant and feels that the permit shouldn't have been issued, it still has to go to the city attorney's office for review to see if we can revoke that permit. I've talked to the city attorney. We can't in this particular case, but
We can't?
We can't.
Can't.
But that's just been over the phone. If you would like something in writing, I can get that in writing for you. So I explained that to the appellant, and maybe that's why they're not here. I'm not sure, but that's sort of the situation between these two properties. And yeah, 718 and 714 Castillo.
Mm-hmm.
So what, I've got a piece of property that sounds like exactly the same thing. It's got an alley between the back of our building and the next building, and we have an easement on his half. The property line goes right down the middle of the alley. We have an easement on his half, he's got an easement on our half. And it's a Dario Pena property, which adds to the interest. Well, Dario has been told by the city to build a shed for a garbage containers, which really means now we can't go over on his half of the property. It hasn't really caused that big of a problem, but I can see if you put a fence down the middle, then about all we could do on our half is maybe use it for parking. The reason it had this easement, it was the old Buick garage, and they used to come out the back door, and they would swing out and go into the other, and then to get cars out. Well, if you put a fence down, that ends that. But it's not used for that anymore. Hayward occupies it now for his patio shop. But I'm wondering if that's really the same similar problem. You're going to put a fence right down the middle of the property line, and it's going to kill the easement that one property owner had on the other property owner. Is that what his complaint is?
Well, from our perspective, if the fence is installed, then one of the property owners can go to court and say, hey, we have an easement. This is a civil issue between the two property owners. We want to exercise our right to utilize the easement, and this fence obstructs that right, and they can have it out in civil court. And that's the appropriate place from our perspective for that to be heard, if it's going to be heard, because we can't revoking a permit without specific cause that's acknowledged in the codes sets us up for a lot of liability. So we don't like to revoke permits. We very, very rarely revoke a permit. It has to be based on the criteria in the code, which I can kind of paraphrase. We issued the permit to the wrong parcel owner. The scope of work that was proposed in the application didn't match the work that was on site. I mean, significantly didn't match. But it has to be something very, very obvious that, in a court of law, we can show a photo and say, here's why we revoked it. This doesn't match this. Name, address, scope of work. Easements, we can't. So private easements, we can't. Utility easements, we can.
Andrew, is this a prescriptive easement or is it an established easement? I mean, what's the status of the easement?
That's a good question, and I'm not a private easement expert. I just asked the city attorney's office to take a look at the easement and tell me what our appropriate response should be.
Yeah, I just think this thing creeped way out of our purview from the beginning. It's at the least it's a planner's issue, not ours. But I think you're right in following the guidelines you have taken.
Okay. So the decision before the board is to either uphold the decision of our office to issue the permit or have us go back to the city attorney for a decision from the city attorney in writing with the intent of revoking the permit.
Well, let me think about this. So the recourse is going to have to be done in civil court anyway, right? I mean, if we deny his reject, then he can go to the civil court and say, I have an easement and I don't want this fence built, and then it's up to the courts. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's our understanding, yes.
I think that's the way it's gotta go.
Yeah, I see a lot of things happening here. It doesn't sound like a title search has been done, for any of the easement status. It would appear to me that the city attorney should rule as to just where this thing is, because it has the potential to become something very embarrassing if it's not addressed formally.
Well, Bonnie?
I agree. The city attorney should, it's beyond us, I think, our board.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, we'll take a vote on
You just need a motion.
just a motion. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we deny the appeal to, I guess, to deny the permit. Is that?
So the appeal is that we issued the permit.
Yeah.
So if you want to find in favor of the appellant, then you would be telling us to go to the city attorney with the intent to revoke the permit and make sure that it's legal to do so. That's what the appellant wants us to take the permit away so that they can't legally build the fence.
Well, I'm just saying, I make a motion we deny his appeal,
Okay.
which would mean that we would be going with the city's original decision.
I second that.
You go ahead.
I second that with the proviso that that the city is going to ministerially address this issue of easement status.
Okay.
So Bonnie, if you have questions, it's okay to ask.
Okay.
Ask.
The wording is very strange here. I'm very confused.
All negative.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's really, I'm afraid to vote because I've voted wrong before, so I'm not, I voted the way I didn't want to vote. So I don't know what to say.
Yeah, take your time, think about it. You want to talk about? We'll talk about it more.
But, well, I can't repeat what Andrew said. I can't quote him, but I agree with what Andrew said. I would vote that direction about not building a fence, denying that permit, and sending it back to the city attorney. Is that what you said?
So, Mr. Chair, you might want to repeat the motion that's on the floor so Bonnie knows what motion's been made and seconded. You'll have to do it from memory because you probably didn't get a chance to write it down.
I didn't.
Melissa has it if you need it, our secretary. Come on down, Melissa.
So as of right now, there's a motion to deny the appeal. Vincent has put the motion out. James has seconded it. So we're just waiting for the third.
So denial of the appeal, as I understand it, for Bonnie's benefit, is the appeal, the appellant, right? The appeal is, hey, building official, you shouldn't have issued this permit. Take the permit back. And if we deny that appeal, then we will not be taking the permit back. We'll leave the permit in play, and it'll be up to the two parcel owners to go to civil court and determine. That's how I understand it. If that
yes.
was the appellant. Or
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I got it.
Yeah.
So,
Do we take?
take a vote if you want.
Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to take a vote. Go ahead and do that.
Is there? Is there a motion to?
We've got a motion already.
Yeah.
So we need a third. So
We have a second motion. All you have to do is call for a vote.
Okay, call for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed.
There you go.
Unanimous?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
That makes your life easy.
These things do twist, don't they? I know there really is a map to.
It's just different. So, Mr. Chair, the last item on here is I just wanted to talk about the board and help the board members understand the kind of uniqueness of this board. This is probably of the boards that we usually see in the development review process and community development. like the Architectural Board of Review and the Single Family Design Review Boards and Planning Commission. They have larger groups. They need more people to have a quorum. All the board members come to every meeting. And this board is pretty unique the way it's been set up, and it's been set up this way, prior to the 90s. It's the same language that we keep adopting. And I just thought I'd run through it real quick so that board members can understand, have a refresher on the makeup of the board. So the membership of the board are individuals that are approved by City Council at the recommendation of the Community Development Director and the Fire Chief. And then there's no limit to the number of people who can be on the board. That's kind of interesting. We don't usually see that in a board. When an appeal is filed, the Community Development Director or the Fire Chief select 5 members from the board. That's how it's supposed to work. Right now, we just send out an email to everybody and say, hey, we got a meeting on this date. Can you make it? But technically, we could be selecting 5 particular people that we think. It says the Community Development Director or the Fire Chief may pick these people as appropriate based on the subject matter. So that's kind of interesting. If it were a fire sprinkler situation or appeal, we may want to have somebody with fire sprinkler and plumbing experience as opposed to accessibility experience. Maybe not. Maybe we'd want both. So that's kind of an interesting piece. And then we talked about it earlier today that a quorum is only 3 people. So even if the Fire Chief and Community Development Director only invited 5 to the meeting and 3 showed up, they'd still have a quorum and they could still go through. There's no term on this board. Most boards have a number of years, and then, you are thanked or renewed. But once you're put on this board, you're here for as long as you want to be on the board. So that's kind of a different twist to the board as well. And what Joe and I are looking at now, the fire marshal and I are looking at, is adding more people to the board based on specialties of professional specialties that we don't have now on the board. So we're kind of looking at that. We're at the very big preliminary stages of that. This is the season of the year where the boards and commissions will go through and start renewing or bringing on new board members. So it starts in September, October, and then November. Things start going to City Council for interviews, and I think they're appointed in late November or December. I'd have to look at the calendar again. So you may hear about other people being added to the board, but don't worry, that doesn't mean you're not added to the board. It just means we're adding more people to try to build more depth to the board.
Will the new people have to go to the City Council?
The new people will be there. I'd have to look, Vincent, but I'm pretty sure everybody has to be interviewed by City Council.
Yeah.
I don't think I was.
Oh, I wasn't. I was back in Dave Johnson, chief engineer days.
Yeah.
He's probably old enough to be your father.
Well, there may be a subcommittee or something that meets, but usually there's an interview process associated with it. I don't know if Pat went through it.
Yeah. You got to go before the City Council and
There
tell them
was.
how you want to be on it. And
There have been so many phase changes to City Council since I ever was there, though.
Yeah. So that's all. I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. That so if you start to see new faces, if for whatever reason there's one item on the agenda and it's not pertinent to maybe your area of expertise, you may or may not be invited. You're always welcome. You can always come, but you may not be invited to sit on the board and be part of the hearing. So don't be offended by that. That's just us trying to be efficient and get the right people in the right spots.
This would come out under her emails.
Correct. Yeah. And that's part of what Joe and I are, how would that roll out? Would we send the email to everybody on the board and say the following members have been selected for this appeal? That way everybody knows.
Yeah,
Because we don't want you to be in the dark and it's like, oh, we had a meeting, nobody told me. That's not a good way to try and build a good team. So we're kind of thinking through how that's going to play out because we want you to be aware of what's going on, whether you're specifically asked to attend or not. But that's just, we're in the preliminary stages of looking at that, and I thought it'd be good to just go over sort of the structure of the board so you're aware of that.
Okay.
Something I like to say is we had 2 cancellations in a row, and I hope you could keep those at a minimum. Because the last time, the Maritime Museum, where I'm a docent, they had to go to a lot of trouble to find a replacement, and then you cancel it. And I think it bothered me more than it did them, but, and if that starts to become a habit, then your members of your board are gonna say, well, Jesus, they're probably gonna cancel it again on us, so why put it in trouble to find somebody to replace me?
You have my commitment that we will do everything we can to schedule meetings on a regular day. That's why we tried to establish a schedule and stick to that schedule. We've had some human errors the last couple times. We didn't get the posting up, the Brown Act posting we were supposed to do. That was our error. We missed that one. That was my team. And I think on the prior one, we just had the translator for Larry didn't.
For Ken. Ken.
For Ken, thank you. Canceled, and we ended up with no translator, and then we can't have the meeting. So sometimes it's within our control, sometimes it's not. But we try, to make sure we honor your time. We value your
I'd
time.
like to, I like this 9:30 morning weekday thing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a good time.
Sure. Melissa, you have something to offer?
So as of right now, we're going to be scheduling the meetings hopefully to be the first Thursday of every month at 2:30. Unless otherwise noted, I will send out the agenda, but we're trying to have a standing meeting. That is because that's the availability of the room
Perfect.
as well as scheduling.
Well, that would kill it, and then I might as well drop out because that's my docent day at the Maritime Museum.
Unfortunately, that's just the room's booked a
Thursday
lot.
afternoons, I go down there from 2 to 5.
Okay. That's what we're looking at right now. I've been trying to find other times that work, but this room gets pretty booked up, and this is where we have a recording device.
Although, wait a minute, let me make a caveat. If that was going to be consistent, I'd just go to them and say, okay, no more, the first Thursdays, I'm not going to be here.
Which I'm trying to make it so that every month it is that way. There may be some months where we have something that changes because this room is already booked for something else. That would be the exception.
Okay.
My comment to that is, for 2016, you could put in for that time and then,
As of right now, I've put it into the calendar, and I'm waiting to make sure that there aren't any other meetings. I think that there's some scheduling issues with December and January, but I think after that we should be pretty set so that the first Thursday of every month at 2:30 we will be in this room, and it'll be a consistent meeting.
okay, thank you.
No, if it's going to be, that'd be no problem. You just switch to the other schedule. I'd just switch my other schedule.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for all that information.
So, yeah, the thing this art museum, can't you make a lot of the decisions yourself as far as temporary variances on access and fire and that? Or are they going to have to come and file an appeal every time they want to do something during construction that's not going to allow the access and fire code parts of the code to be complied with?
Well, that's what we're wrestling with. We're trying to figure out how.
Be more efficient if you just used your good judgment and said this is the way it's going to be for 30 days, 60 days, or whatever.
It would be. The building code requires ratification, that specific term, by this board whenever I allow something other than the minimum requirements for accessibility. And if this were a project that were fully funded and they were just doing it in phases because their design work was, just in time, they were getting their design done to get their permit just in time to start the next phase, and it was more of a program, then I'd have less worry. But when you're talking about an entity that is going to start a project based on donations, and I experienced this down in Ventura when I was there. The museum started their project. I think it was 6 months later the recession hit. They had enough funds to kind of finish it, but then it was sort of hanging there for the next phase. So we had to sit down with them and redesign and come up, because it was years before. I don't even know if they've started the next phase yet. So we always have to make sure that whatever we're permitting, we're going to be able to live with for years until, something happens that they don't have the funds to follow through. So that's the challenge.
Yeah, it's really hard as a fire marshal or building official to do this in a closet too. It's really important to bring it out, other eyes see it, that there is some concurrence. And I don't know, I think in the past, building officials, fire marshals have been very nervous about the idea of even letting the committee handle these things. But the way the laws have changed and the public scrutinies and everything have really forced them to bring it out.
Yeah, well, it would almost be like a city council consent agenda, wouldn't it?
Almost, yeah.
Well, it's possible that, let's look and see how things unfold initially with this project and what we bring to the board. And if the board decides that you'd like to issue a general approval with a certain scope to it, and that works, then maybe that's something we can do. Bob's, the program that they're putting together, the phasing and the programming they're doing, is very detailed, very elaborate. So, he's trying to package it into nice, neat packages of maybe 2 or 3 phases. And if that's the case, then we won't be before you very often. But if it starts breaking out into 5 and 6 phases, then we may want to look at it and say, this is kind of getting onerous. Let's find a more general way to
It's
deal
got a
with
lot
it.
of alligators in that swamp. I could just see it from the pictures.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's
it's a very
It's an
complicated
expensive
little
project right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Andrew, on this subject, I think about the ADA issues that we see, and I was almost sure that's what he was going to talk about. Well, I love seeing that elevator go to the roof. I mean, at that point in time, if I stay quiet long enough.
If you're gonna build it, yeah, might as well build it right to the roof.
Yeah.
Get it over with.
But the thing that was real important to me is that if we're hearing an ADA issue, and I'm looking down and I don't see Bonnie, I don't see Ken, I'm not happy.
Well, you can have my word that we won't hear it.
Yeah,
Because they have to
I
be-
would so much appreciate that.
They have to be present in order for us to hear an appeal or ratification on accessibility. That's an essential part
Yeah, I
of
just
the law.
ruling on something like that without having tried to walk a mile in those shoes is just not a good feeling at all.
And the board, this is what you bring to us, right? You bring us your expertise in your areas of experience and professionalism. So that's the value of going before the board is for us is we truly do get ratification. We get another perspective. We get years and decades of experience that we don't have in whatever that expertise might be. So we appreciate that.
Can I make a suggestion that I try to find somebody that's blind who would like to be on this board, because I think that's really important for public buildings for access and for just not make sure there's not something hanging too low or kind of any obstacles in the way. If that's
Yes, Bonnie, in general, if anyone has someone that they would like to recommend to be on the board, have them get in touch with me, and we'll get them an application form, and it's all done through the city clerk's office, and we'll give it to the fire chief and the community development director for their take on it. And this is a good time to do that because we're looking at the board makeup and how we can make it more diverse and get the expertise that we're going to need.
Thank you.
Board have any other questions, comments? Okay, at this point, I guess the motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate you guys coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.